So today, I'm going to tell you what it takes to be a successful creative director. But before I do, I want to take you back to 2001. 2001 was a really big year. It was a year of life-changing events, in fact. 9/11. The first same-sex marriage in the Netherlands. The disarmament of the IRA started the peace process. The launch of the iPod completely changed the music industry forever. Start of the Afghan war. The foot and mouth outbreak that destroyed, completely ruined the British farming and livestock industry. Wikipedia was launched. Xbox, the iconic Xbox, was launched. And human genome sequencing was first unveiled. That's a big year. But none of those things were as life-changing for me as what happened to me in France that year. I won the Grand Prix at Cannes. For this. Changed my life forever. Changed it completely and utterly. Because some fool decided that that qualified me to be a creative director. So they offered me a job. I took it. Everyone wants to be a creative director, right? I just had kids as well, so I needed the money, truthfully. It wasn't pretty. It really wasn't. It was a bit of a car crash, is the truth of it. Not because, not for any other reason than I was just utterly clueless. I'd gone from being a creative that only cared about winning awards and, creating fame for the work and the awards. It hadn't even occurred to me what a creative director did. He was just the bloke that said yes or no. At the time, blokes, just a person that said yes or no. Didn't really think much more of it than that. I wanted to be the person that said yes or no, right? Particularly to my own work. Brilliant. But I was clueless. And not because I'm not capable, and not because I'm daft. It's just that I was completely unprepared. Completely unprepared. Nobody had ever sort of sat me down and said, right, this is what the job entails. You don't know what you don't know, right? You kind of go into it thinking, yeah, I've got this, I can do this. Honestly, felt like I was hit with a sledgehammer, completely hopeless. Because nobody said, here's the job spec, Mick, here's what it is, here's what you need to do, here's what you should focus on. And I looked around at the time, no training, no guidance, no knowledge transfer. Now that's inexcusable, really, no knowledge transfer. A lot of creative directors aren't willing to share what they know, actually, because, it's been really hard for them to get that information, gives them competitive advantage. They don't want to go giving it all away. So I also then, desperate, looked around for help, information. And I don't know about anyone else, but that stuff on LinkedIn, those sort of kind of little things on LinkedIn that say, do this, do that, be brave, bold, rebel, care. When? Who with? Now? Should I do it now? I just needed someone to explain to me what I was supposed to do. But instead, all I got was this. You pick up as you go. It's one of those jobs. right? You just pick it up as you go. Just get on with it, Mick. Stop moaning. For goodness sake. You learn on the job. It's that kind of career that you learn on the job, right? The other one is to hear a lot. Brilliant advice this is. Fake it till you make it. I don't know if any of those things sound familiar. And then occasionally someone would say to me, well, what you've got to understand, Mick, is that you can't teach being a creative director. Really? Okay. Well, I fundamentally disagree with that. And I've discovered over the last sort of year and a half that most of the really smart and sensible creative directors in the world agree with me that you can actually teach it. And we need to teach it. We absolutely need to teach it. Anyway, so as I sort of went from being a fairly catastrophic early days creative director, kind of torching and burning everything, in my path, I started to sort of settle into it, become a executive creative director, and then a chief creative officer, and then a partner in my own brand consultancy. Still, I always looked around and thought, surely at this point there's got to be some help here. There's got to be some advice someone's going to give me. There's got to be something I can do. A book I can read, or a program, an industry recognised program. Because I know there's sort of some stuff out there and it's brilliant that people are doing it. But there's nothing really that the industry would recognise and say, yeah, that's great. That's kind of what you need to do. Yeah, and actually, that exists for a lot of roles within our industry, just not for the creative director, not for the creative leader. And I kind of think, really? How are we okay with that as an industry? How's that a thing? Right? This year, as an industry, we've sort of crossed the $1 trillion barrier. As an industry, we're now worth $1 trillion. Right? It's a lot of money. And how is it okay that $1 trillion industry doesn't really focus on training? Probably, arguably, the most significant people, role in the industry. How's that? It doesn't really strike me as a great idea, personally. Also, we're a $1 trillion industry, but you think about the trillions of dollars of other industries that we affect, both positively and negatively. So why is there no industry training program, recognised industry training program to help us professionalise, this incredibly important job? Everyone I asked has just said, yeah, you're right. Literally everyone I asked. I've only got one word for it, honestly. It's madness. Right? Just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. It's sort of like a collective, acceptance that, that's just the way it is. Well, let's not make it the way it is. Let's change that. I'd like to read you this. It would make a huge difference to creative departments, agencies, clients, and the industry generally to have a happier, calmer, and more confident CDs. The more the mechanics of being a great CD are understood, the more we can focus on the work and nurturing talent. And that is what really matters. It's kind of hard to disagree with that. So I thought, well, if no one else is going to do it, I'll do it then. So I did it. And that actually is a quote taken from my own book that launched last week. Thank you. It's called The Complete Creative Director, a masterclass, and I've forgotten the title, a masterclass in confident creative leadership. Of all the things you could forget today. Genius. Now, it was brilliant for me when I pitched the idea to publishers. Because I said, you know what? No one's ever written a book about how to be a creative director. Nobody's ever written a comprehensive guide to creative direction. Nobody. And they said, surely. I said, check it out, have a look. And the 3 publishers I approached all offered me publishing contract. They said, no, you're right, no one's ever done it. Amazing. Brilliant for me. But how is that okay with the industry? There's never been a book about it. And it's okay, you can disagree with a book, but at least it's a start point, right? It's a blueprint. It's a place to begin. So the book covers it's got 11 chapters, and they pretty much cover everything that you'll need as a creative director, from before you start being a creative director, all the way through to being a CCO. And everything you'll need in between, because so many of the skills are applicable regardless of where you are on your journey as a creative director. And the notion of creative director changes in so many different places, so many different understandings of what the role is, who does what, where and when, that actually this is the generic term for creative director. When I started, I think that's when I realised why nobody had written it, actually, because I would say it probably took me literally every single one of my 25 years of creative and business leadership to be able to write that book, to be able to know enough, to understand enough, to be able to put it in enough context to write the book. It then took over 12 months, in fact, of writing and research. Yeah, you know, I don't know if anyone knows about writing books, but it's all unpaid. My wife was thrilled. You're going to do what? Idiot. But what I wanted to do as well is, I took it really, really seriously. So I thought, I don't want the world to be seen just through my prism. So I reached out to 20 of who I considered to be the best leaders in the creative industry, to understand what they thought about creative direction, how they thought creative direction worked, what they wanted to see in creative directors, and all the things they'd learned. So this isn't a book just of what I've learned in 25 years of leadership, in over 30 years of being in the industry. It's also what all of these people have learned as well. So I interviewed CCOs, I interviewed global CCOs, I interviewed CEOs, CSOs, CPOs, CFOs, headhunters, industry journalists, to get a really rounded view of what it takes to be a really successful creative director. And this was the important thing. And this is what puts the lie to anybody that tells you you can't learn to be a creative director. You can't teach it. There was less than 5 degrees of difference between everyone I spoke to. And we spoke a lot. I've got 40 hours of recorded interviews. That's basically start at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, finish at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, if you want to ever listen to them all. That's a lot. So, point of the talk. What does it take to be a successful creative director? Sorry, mustn't touch mine. Well, as hopefully you've understood from the beginning of this talk, it takes an awful lot more than being good at making ads, which is kind of what I thought it was when I first started. It still seems to be pretty much what the industry believes is what it takes to be good at making ads. Because from my very first student job onwards, I was headhunted into every job I ever had. Never applied for a job. Nobody ever asked me what I was good at. Was I good at nurturing? Was I good at building relationships? Was I good at culture, building cultures? What was I like as a human being? No, they just went up. Awards, agency. Would you like a job? Yes, please. I'll take that job. Yeah, seriously, that's what the industry kind of thinks. One of the conversations I had with one of the biggest headhunters in the world, I said, What do people ask for when they want to hire a CCO or an ECD? She said, they just want to know awards, work and agency. I said, yeah, that's what I thought. So let's assume creative excellence is table stakes to be a really good creative director. Let's assume you've got really good taste, really good judgment. You've produced really good work. You know what really good work is, okay? Table stakes. So what are the 10 key attributes of the best creative directors? The first one is the ability to be honest with yourself, is to have enough self-awareness to look at who you are, what makes you happy, what you're good at, all of these things. I didn't stop for a second to think what would make me happy. I just wanted to be a creative director, like everyone does. You sort of think, yeah, I just want to be a creative director, it'd be brilliant. I mean, I wanted to be one because I had massive authority issues. And I hated the idea that someone could tell me what to do. Couldn't bear it. I'm not alone, I'm pretty sure. But you have to be honest with yourself. What makes you happy, right? Because you got into it because you're a creative soul. You want to make things. And it's a great way of making things and getting paid to make things. You know, you're a commercial artist, if you like. So it's important that if that's what really makes you happy, if that's what you love, if that's what you're great at, if getting lost down a kind of a rabbit hole of, you know, creative exploration and spending a day with your creative partner, musing over beautiful sort of production techniques and that kind of stuff, you might find being a creative director actually isn't for you. Because that will definitely be part of your day, but that won't be the point of your day. Right? And you might just miss that so much that you're a bit of a crap creative director in truth. You know, and everyone around you in your department, in the agency, they need you to be a lot more than that. Okay? So that's the first big call you've got to make. Is it actually what I really want? The industry genuinely is full of really bad creative leaders. It is. And I don't blame them. You know, I'm not having a go at anybody. And they were probably amazing practitioners. And the industry is desperately in need of brilliant creatives doing brilliant creative work, right? I think we'd all agree on that. What the industry doesn't need is any more pretty average creative directors, because we're bursting at the seams there. This one, I think, is probably the most important thing for any creative director. Do you have the right temperament? You can learn it, you can change, because I didn't. And it's still borderline now. You know when you've got that client that's like 18 months in, and you've just presented work, and it's brilliant, the work's brilliant, you love it, and you've given everything to it, this is great work, right? And that client says, I don't like it. Could we have an ad with a dog in it? I like dogs. People like dogs. Do you feel triggered by that? I feel triggered by that. But you have to not be triggered by that. You have to be able to take that in. Think about it and come back with a brilliant response. You know, it's not enough to be this person. Yeah, that literally was me. Is me? No, was me. You know, is this you when things aren't going your way? You know, the trouble is, as a creative, you're sort of given the space to be a bit like that because it's okay, you're in a pretty liberal environment and everyone's kind of giving you the space and kind of going, oh yeah, but you know what they're like, they're crazy. And that's fine because you're not let out of your box very often. But you cannot be this person as a creative director because everyone's depending on you to keep things under control, to have this. They're looking to you to know that you're going to make it work, you're going to make it good, you're going to make it all okay, right? It's really, really important that you're able to keep yourself under control. Now, that doesn't mean you're not passionate, that doesn't mean you're not really good and driven and all those things. You've got to be able to present yourself in a way that is controlled. It takes an immense amount of emotional intelligence to be able to always turn up in a way that is the most useful version of yourself, right? It takes a huge amount of emotional intelligence to walk into a room, because as a creative director, meetings, back-to-back meetings, lots of meetings, constant meetings, you're going from one thing to the next. You have to have the emotional intelligence to go, okay, read the room, what do I need to bring to this room to move the project forward? Because that's what you're doing there, right? You never go, as a creative director, you never go into a meeting as a spectator. You're always there to move things forward, right? So have the emotional intelligence to understand what it is you need to bring to it to be able to move it forward in a really, really positive way that people won't always like, but they'll respect because they can see why you're doing it, you know? Every creative review depends or relies upon you having the emotional intelligence to read what's needed. Every pitch, every hiring, every client meeting, everything. This is the big pivot in a creative person's kind of career. This is the sort of the defining moment, really, when you go from it's all about me and my awards and my reputation and my work and my name to being about what you can provide for other people, right? It's the really tough one. This is the one that so many people struggle with. But, you know, get there in time, but at first people really, really struggle with this because you need to give away your best thinking. You have to constantly be the person that just is really happy to give away your best thinking, all your best thoughts, all your best work, all your best insights, give them away and expect nothing in return. Nothing. Nobody's going to high-five you. It won't be you going to pick up the awards for it. And you've got to be okay with that, right? And expect nothing back. If you can do that, you're probably going to do quite well. Because what you get back with that is everybody's respect and everybody's trust. And I often get asked, because I do lots of coaching for creative directors, I often get asked, how can I get to better work? I just want to get to better work. Well, if the road you're taking is just to get to better work, you won't get to better work. You'll get to better work by building all the blocks. And this is one of the key blocks in being a giver, not a taker, because you build trust, you build respect. People want to work for you. They want to do great things for you. They want to give everything for you. And if you're a really good creative director, everybody wants to work for you because they just want to do their best work because they know you're going to help them to do their best work. And who wants a creative director that isn't going to help them do their best work? Like nobody. And don't think for a second that everyone wouldn't talk about it. Wasting your time with him, always puts his ideas before everyone else's. You don't ever want to be that creative director because you never get rid of that reputation. I love this quote, actually, in the book from Chris Beresford-Hill, who's the global CCO at BBDO. Just the last two lines, really. Other people's success is your only success. Great thing to remember as a creative director. But it takes a lot of confidence. It takes a lot of confidence. Because as with most creative people, I mean, there's always a bit of an insecurity, you know, about, am I good enough? Will everyone know I'm good enough? All that kind of stuff. We all feel it, everyone does. And it takes a little bit. But once you get it, once you grasp it, it's like the best feeling. It really is. You've got to be confident in your own decisions. This is quite a hard thing to navigate successfully. You know, this does take, you know, a little bit of kind of trial and error often, because while you don't want to be the shouty, didactic, just do this, right? That's creative dictation, not creative direction. You need to be really confident and feel confident in asserting your point of view. And if your point of view means that you genuinely believe, you really genuinely believe that what you're saying to people is going to move things forward, move the project forward, make something better, then everyone will listen and everyone will respect you for it. You know, and the more times you do that, the more you build that up, the more people see that, the more everyone experiences that of you, then they'll just want that. They'll want that guidance. Because the second you aren't sure, and this is tough, right? You've had a long day, a lot of decisions, you don't know all the facts, sometimes you've just got to sort of guess at things, there's a lot riding on it, there's a lot of pressure. Oh my God, if I get this one wrong, what happens then? All that stuff builds up in your head. But if you don't back yourself, then what happens is you create a vacuum. And there's always someone very, very willing to jump into that vacuum. Could be an account person, could be a planner, could be a creative, could be a client, could be anyone, right? But it will be someone. And they'll make the decisions for you, or they'll influence everything. And again, you don't get the room back if that happens. It ripples out in a heartbeat. The whole agency knows you're not really leading things. You've got to back yourself. You've really got to back yourself. You've always got to feel that, like I said, you're doing the right thing. You're moving the project forward. Nurturing. I like to believe that all creative people are empathetic souls. I think mostly we are. I think most creative people are, in my experience, really nice, interesting, interested people. A few bellends, of course, but outnumbered by the lovely people in this room. So being the person that creates the environment is addictive. It is, I would say it's been the greatest privilege of my working life to have been the person, to have been able to create the environment that people worked in. Because you realise that everyone is looking to you. Everyone's looking to you to, to help them do their best work, be their best selves, to be really, to really, to do well. And they're looking to you. And that's a big responsibility. But if you actually like people, it's a privilege. It's a lovely thing to do. But you've got to be interested in them. You've got to know what makes them tick. They're all different. Everyone's different. And actually, you're kind of a nurturer or you're not. This is almost one of the harder things to learn, But good creative directors are all good at nurturing in different ways. Not everyone sort of wants a hug first thing in the morning. I'm quite tactile, but not famous for being a hugger. But what you realise is the collective success, everyone's collective success, just becomes a much, much more wonderful and bigger thing than your own individual personal success. And if you genuinely feel that, then you're going to do a really good job. You're going to be a really nice, lovely creative director to work for. I'm going to read you this. I'm going to just read this from start to finish. There's a quote in the book from Katie at Mother, who runs Mother. Probably the smartest person I spoke to. Actually, I shouldn't say that because that offends all the other people, but just the loveliest, smartest person, honestly. And this, to be able to say this, all of us have been in a relationship where it feels one-sided, where the person you're dating has it all on their terms. They're always late. They put you down a bit. They don't make you feel good about yourself. And then you break up with them and you meet someone who cares about your day, who makes you feel really good about yourself, who stretches you, challenges you, and they see something in you that you never saw in yourself. And they make you feel amazing. That's what a creative director's job is. Honestly, when she said that, I thought, I'm just going to give up on my book because it won't be as good as hers. But I love that because that is what a creative director's job is. Impossibly high standards. I'm kind of guessing that if you're a successful creative to start with, you've got pretty impossibly high standards. No one's going to push you harder than you push yourself. You're absolutely driven to rinse the last few ounces out of everything you do, right? You're probably quite hard to be around. Struck a nerve. Yeah, you're probably quite hard to be around because you're so driven. Those ads I showed you at the beginning, the ones for Stella that I won the Grand Prix for, never forget, my wife had just given birth to my first child. She'd had an emergency cesarean after 26 hours of labour. I'm not proud of this story, by the way. I'm just sharing it with you because we're all human and fragile. And we'd just finished the shoot about a week before, and I had all the, in the old days, the proofs. I had 6 proofs. Anyway, Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. She's really kind of woozy, holding our firstborn child. This was probably, and I'd left it like 5 or 6 hours. I mean, I'm not inhuman. And I laid the proofs all round the hospital bed, and I went, look! That's sort of impossibly high standards, right? That's what I mean. Now, it's a double-edged sword. Impossibly high standards are a double-edged sword. Because if you expect your standards of everyone else, right, you're going to make life difficult for everybody. You're actually going to undermine them. You're going to make them lose their confidence in you, around you, and you won't get the best from them. Making them feel like they could never be as good as you is like Creative Director 101. Don't do it. Right? They don't need to know how smart you are, right? They just need to know that you think they're smart. What you have to do is turn that impossibly high standards that you have into be a beacon. Be a beacon for those standards. Create an environment that enables people who are driven to follow suit, to have those kind of standards. You know, talk about those standards. Make people realize that's kind of where your bar is. That's where you want to help everyone to get to. And actually your job is to ask them, how can I help you to achieve that? Not say, that's not good enough, give it to me, I'll do it. Every creative director has done that at some point and regretted it the second they said it. Because you lose people. They don't think you're clever. They don't think you're really talented. They just think you're horrible. Strategic and, sorry, I'm just going to quick glass of water. Strategic and creative. So, creatives think about executions. Creative directors think about executions that build brands, right? Your job isn't just to think about that particular piece of work, it's to think about that particular piece of work in the context of the brand you are now the guardian of. That's how it works. So, you have to be really strategically aware. You can only do that by kind of understanding brand strategy, right? So you can't just be the creative or the creative director anymore that kind of says, oh, you know, whatever, give me the brief, we'll just weave our magic with it, right? Because the world has got way more complicated, way more connected. And actually, all the things we do now, you know, if you're kind of the guardian of a brand, it will have so many different touch points, so many different ways of connecting to clients, to customers, so many ways of, you know, building a kind of a web of how someone's going to connect. That actually, sometimes the connective tissue is more strategic even than it is creative. So for you not to be able to understand how that is and what that is and how that works, it's going to be a pretty big hole in your game. Because if you aren't in control of that, again, you're allowing and enabling other people to be in control of that. And you don't want to get to that, you know. I worked it out once that I made the other way around. I made 2% of everything I ever thought of as a creative. 2%. That means for every 2 yeses, I got 98 no's. Yet here I am. You have to just be relentless. You thought it was hard as a creative. Jesus. It's even harder as a creative director. I reckon that probably goes up a bit. And it's not because you're not doing good work or anything. It's just because there's a myriad reasons why certain things do and don't happen. And as we all know, the truth is there's kind of probably a few more downs than there are ups in the average creative person's day, creative leader's day. It's bumpy and it's difficult. I mean, you pay a high price because it's a wonderful return and it's an amazing career to have. But nevertheless, it's still incredibly difficult to keep facing into everything. But here's the thing. You've probably all experienced this at some point, so you know what I'm talking about. When your creative director's head goes down in an agency, God, you think, Jesus, where are the lifeboats? I've got to get out. There's nothing worse than the creative director's head going down. So even if you're feeling that, you can't show that, You have to be the person that kind of can dust themselves off and go, right, we're going again. We're going again and we're going to be better. It's going to be bigger and better next time, next time, next time. Always, just keep going. Because the alternative is what? Exactly. I like this observation as well. You also need to be relentless. Because I think any creative director worth their salt just lives and breathes what they do. I can honestly say that in my career, through all the different stages of creative leadership, I don't think there was ever a weekend or ever a holiday where I wasn't secretly thinking about work. No, I'm having a lovely time, darling. No. No, just making notes about that play I said I'd always write. It just never leaves you. It's vocational. It's a lifestyle choice. It's kind of not a job. And that might not be for you, right? And that's okay. Not every single creative director is like that. But the really successful ones are like that. Last point. Great communicator. This is one of those funny ones, isn't it? It's sort of a sweet irony to this, that most creatives struggle with this, because a lot of us are quite introverted. Creativity attracts introverted people, because it means we spend a lot of time on our own, thinking in quiet spaces. Either it attracts people, or people are attracted to it, or they become like that. No one actually knows, but there are an awful lot of, we kind of over-index on introverted people. So actually, we're not always in the habit of getting on the front foot with communicating our thoughts, our beliefs, and all these things. That has to change. You have to be willing and open to always share what you're thinking, because everyone wants to know what you're thinking. You're the creative leader of a business. Of course they want to know what you're thinking. It can affect their day, it can affect their livelihood, it can affect their careers, all their opportunities. So you've got to be really open to sharing your thoughts. Also sort of sharing your vulnerabilities. You don't want to just be this kind of stonewall automaton person. You've got to open up to people. You've got to tell people what you want, what's good, what you like. Praise people, ask them about their day. If you're doing your job and you're not spending an awful lot of it talking, you're not doing it right. The other thing, of course, is a great communicator isn't just someone that talks a lot. It's someone that understands the difference between talking and listening when you need to listen, but still communication. You've got to be open to communicate. You can't shut yourself away. You've got an incredibly wide sphere of influence now as a creative leader. You've got a responsibility to the industry generally. The industry wants to know what you think. To clients want to know what you think. Honestly, I used to hate the idea of doing like private view or writing an article or doing a kind of an event or a talk or something, until somebody explained it to me. Yes, but Mick, it makes it a lot easier to win new business. All right, okay. So it's not about you, Mick. They're not really interested in you. They're interested in your job and what it means and what you think as a representative of the industry. And then suddenly it was okay. I could do that. That felt all right. It wasn't personal anymore. It wasn't about, the home Mick. It was about the work Mick. And I felt okay with that. And actually, it was true. You'd walk into pitches, and clients would know who you were because they just read about you the week before in an article or something. And it does make a difference. So you've got to be okay with it, now more than ever. I heard this thing recently that in the 90s, it was all about who you knew, whereas now, it's all about who knows you. And I think that was I forget who said it. I will try and remember who actually quoted that, because it's a great quote. Anyway, that's it. That's the 10. Hands up who's got all 10. Well done. That's amazing. I always know there's always one person that puts a hand up, right? I love that. I love that. Well done. Because you are the only person in the world who has all 10. And I think you should write the next book. Honestly, no one's got all 10. I reckon at my peak, maybe 7. Temperament shaky. But don't worry. Take the monkey off your back. You know, nobody's got all 10. You know, you're all. Everyone's just trying to do the best they can. Is the truth of it. All creative directors are work in progress. Even the ones you think are perfect. Even the ones you think are amazing and famous and everyone loves and talks about and thinks they're the best creative directors ever. They're sitting there in their sort of own quiet moments thinking, shit. They are. But the difference between the good creative directors and the great creative directors is this. They will spend the time trying to understand their weaknesses. They'll develop their strengths, of course. You'd be silly not to. But equally, you need to understand, recognize your weaknesses and work on your weaknesses. Back to that first point about being honest with yourself, having the self-awareness to go, you know what? I don't really like to admit it, but I'm not very good at that. You've got to have the emotional intelligence to pick up, because no one will come and tell you. You know, no one's ever going to come to you and say, you know, teams in your department are going to come and say, you know what, Mick, you're a 5 on nurturing. Am I? Okay, I better work on that. You're going to need to work it out. Or obviously, read my book. Or even, come on one of my courses. I've just agreed, and I'm so excited to be doing this, just agreed with D&AD to do a collaboration to do the Emerging Leaders Mastering Creative Management course. It's a masterclass for confident leadership, building culture, delivering creative excellence, understanding what's expected of you, understanding what's needed, understanding what you need to bring to it to succeed. And it's aimed at the next generation. It's not that the old generation it's too late for them, but this is aimed at the next generation. And it starts in September. There's only 20 places. Hopefully that grows, but there's only 20 places. It's CPD accredited, and so it will be a properly worked through, you know, and really amazing course, I think, and one I wish had been around when I started, because it would have been slightly less disastrous. For everyone else who doesn't go on the course, I actually now have realized that I really, really want to help more and more people to feel comfortable with creativity, whether they're in the creative industries or not. So I now actually write, this is my second book, I've got 2 more coming, and I now write on creativity, talk, I give talks, workshops, training around various different aspects of creativity. So, you know, that's kind of what I do now. And in a really, really rare, incredibly rare display of generosity, my publisher, who is genuinely the tightest publisher I've ever met, to celebrate the launch of the book and to celebrate being here, I think he sort of was in tears doing it, but there's a 30% discount for anybody that wants to order the book. Delegates that want to order the book through their website. Honestly, I'd rather you did it on Amazon, because I get the full cut. But, it only seemed fair to mention it. And that's it. Thank you very much.